Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to the Second Button Podcast. I'm Andrew, and this is...
I'm Brian. This is a Seinfeld, review, watch along, chat about podcast. And
By the end of season 2, we'll know what to call ourselves, I think.
Yeah, it's a Seinfeld podcast for sure. But this episode, we're talking about season 2, episode 5, The Apartment.
Yes.
So,
and this was Peter Mellon's first episode that he wrote for them. He kind of pitched the idea of having Elaine was going to move further away and how they're going to deal with that.
mm-hmm.
And then Larry, David, and Jerry, they said, why don't we have her move closer, move into the building?
Yeah.
And how's Jerry going to deal with that? So that's what they went with. And made it funnier. So they gave him that idea and said, now you run with it. And he ran with it. And then after he brought the script back, Larry David said, won't read it for a couple of days. We'll take a look at it. And by the time he got home to his apartment, there's a message. And it was Larry David. He said, I read it and you're hired. So
nice. Yeah.
This is what got him his job this episode.
Nice. I'm not too familiar with the writers and stuff like that, but I don't really pay. I guess that's one thing I don't really pay attention to is like who wrote what episode and shit like that. Or
this was in the on the DVD. It was extra stuff. So
mm-hmm. Yeah.
I recognized the name, but didn't really know him well. I just kind of went with it. So
I know that like later in the show they'll have like characters who are in the show where it's like, oh, Alec Berg. That's definitely a name, and then Jerry does some jokes about it. It's like, oh, it's a very distinguished name. Oh, Alec Berg, and then you see it's like an executive producer or something like that, or a writer on the show is Alec Berg. So I'm sure that was just probably a joke that Jerry would say. I'm like, let's shove it into the show somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's my show. I'm gonna shove these like just
do whatever I want.
ham-fist jokes. Just like, all right, well, it's Jerry's show, so
yeah.
All right. So the episode starts off, with the stand-up bit, and then he is talking about painting his apartment, about how it, when painting a room, how it just the walls are getting smaller and smaller, and how he knows. Actually, yes, it is by just the layer of paint, and then it's like the walls are slowly closing in, and it's like
1/32 of an inch smaller on each wall.
Yeah, how long that would take for it to be noticeable at all? He talks about it's like, oh yeah, you keep putting more and more layers of paint on there, and you're not gonna be able to find the outlets. That the only way you find it is like a pig snout trying to shove through the wall. And he's like, oh, that's where the plug is. And he does it also another thing about like, Star Trek is like, the male, like, male, like, did you say fantasy?
The big chair idea.
Yeah, the big chair in the living room with the TV and stuff like that. It's kind of weird that he would jump between that, like two.
Yeah, from paint to Star Trek. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I don't think the Star Trek thing needed to be there. But
and if I was going to hang out at someone's house, it wouldn't be Kirk, so I'll go to Picard. So
yeah,
you mentioned Kirk, but yeah, I guess Picard wasn't really known then. They started around the same time. Yeah,
I don't know. I've never have I ever watched Star Trek.
No,
any of it. I guess I've watched some of the newer ones, which are the ones that people don't like, which are the new movies that came out with the.
Oh yes, J.J. Abrams ones. They were good though. I enjoyed them.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem, and I don't know. A lot of people are Star Trek fans. Finding out,
yeah,
especially like podcast people that we know or different podcasts that I listen to. They're Star Trek fans. I'm like, still has never pushed me to ever want to watch the show.
No, you're still not interested?
Nope. Don't give a shit.
Wait till their anime version comes out and you can give that a go.
Yeah, probably still not. But
no.
Yeah. Anyways, that was my little like. Yeah, never seen it. Yep, don't care. I still got to finish watching Star Wars. I do like Star Wars. I know that they're not analogous.
And they have anime.
Yeah. Got to watch those. Anyways, back to Seinfeld. It opens up with Kramer showing off his new look. New do. He's got mousse in his hair.
I have a note here, and it has Kramer's hair. Kind of looks like Brian's.
Really?
It's off to the side. It's a little wavy. It's black,
Yeah.
Yours looks better, obviously, but,
I do have a little bit of a curl and a little bit of a wave into it. I don't know what mousse is.
It's foamy
Is it-
stuff.
Because I've used gel, like kind of like pomade wax or whatever, and then he's using.
It's almost
mousse.
like if you took gel
Uh-huh.
and your pomade, you mushed it all up together and put it in an aerosol can. That's what it comes out as.
So and and hairspray, so it's all kind of
Yeah.
in one. So it's just kind of funny because he's kind of got it's flat look, but he's still wavy and stuff like that. It's kind of like the look of when Jerry gets a shitty haircut. That's what kind of looks like, or when they have later on in the series when they have low pressure shower heads, and he's like,
Yes.
I'm not Kramer. That's what it reminds me of, but he's liking it. So he's talking about it, and then they're like, yeah, it's Moose. So it goes on to Elaine talking about how her friend is having a Sunday brunch for like the New York
marathon.
New York Marathon. I guess it's along the raceway there.
And the Kramer scene here seems kind of odd. He goes, I keep forgetting to enter that. And he pulls out a piece of licorice and eats it, and then they pan back from it. It's just like Kramer felt forced in that.
What I did like about it is because she's mentioning like, oh yeah, New York Marathon, and then like you said, Kramer's like, oh, I keep forgetting to enter that, and then he and then it pans to like a tighter shot of Elaine's face, like, sure, anyways, you dumbass, like he just interjects her by saying that, and then her face is like, yeah, sure, you were gonna do that, we all believe you, anyways.
It keeps going,
and then she mentions about she can invite friends, so it's like, okay, cool, sets something up for later. And then there's a loud commotion and a hubbub in the hallway of the apartment, and so it kind of cuts to a scene where Harold and Manny are in the hallway, they're arguing. And then Jerry, he goes out to break it up with boys.
Yeah.
And it's like they let Jerry know that the woman that lives above Jerry, she died in her apartment.
Yeah.
And the only reason why they found her is because she was late on her rent. The guy, he's like, oh, and I saw her without her wig. Oh, it was tragic.
Horrifying.
It's tragic to see this dead woman. She's dead, and then they're just has to dunk on her even more to say like she's ugly without her wig. It's like like everybody in the show is just a dickhead in a different way.
Yeah, the fact that she's dead wasn't horrifying, but the fact that she didn't have her wig on was.
Yeah, like,
right?
oh, I saw a dead body. Like, oh god, without a wig.
And this was Ashley's weekly celebrity notice.
Mm-hmm.
The two that were in the hallway, one of them was Otho from Beetlejuice.
Yes,
he was for the seance and everything, and then the other guy was Hefe from Three Amigos.
Oh,
you ever watched the Three Amigos?
No, never seen that, but I've seen Beetlejuice.
Like, Hefe, what is a plethora? So, he's Hefe.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I saw that and I'm like, oh, that's Beetlejuice guy. At least I would have assumed it was. And I'm like, I bet Andrew's wife is gonna
pick that one.
Get the
assuming
skinny on that guy. Mm-hmm.
They're probably both comedians as well. That's probably part of the part where he pulls in his comedian friends to do bit parts.
Yeah,
I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but and there mentioned she's dying, and the apartment is like, hey Jerry, do you know anybody that could take the apartment? And then he mentions that Elaine is like, oh, she'd be great. And then the guy, he says like, oh, I love Elaine. She's so nice to me. She always says hi. Like that's enough for me to like somebody, is just to say hi.
Yeah, just say hello and I'm good.
Oh yeah, you could have this great apartment just for saying hi to me.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell if he was like, no, he's serious.
Yeah.
And then with that, it just kind of made me think of like a lot of these episodes, or at least the early ones, were all like focused around apartments, like dry cleaners, and it makes me think of like in New York, is that all that's going on over there? They're looking for an apartment. They're
trying to get cheap rent.
Yeah,
clean
your clothes, and going to a bodega. Is that all they talk about in New York? Because even I listen to some comedy podcasts now, and they seem to always talk about apartments. Yeah. Buying apartments, like, oh, is that even worth it? Moving to a different apartment, going to different like boroughs in New York. I'm like, is that a huge concern in just New York? I'm like, what's a good apartment?
Yeah, it must be. They wouldn't be the sort.
Yeah, I know.
And that hallway is huge. I've never been in an apartment building with a hallway that big.
It's such a waste of space.
Huge.
They could just move it out more, or like each apartment could get an extra like 3 feet.
Yeah. Now, when I'm working, I never see apartments like that. I'm like squeezing down with a stretcher and bumping into things. And
Oh shit, yeah. I think only apartments I've ever have been like outdoor, like they're not like connected indoor hallways.
yeah.
But yeah, that's something. You're right. It is like the size of like a basketball court. How big like they can play tennis in there.
Playing some badminton out in the hallway.
But yeah, it just makes me think I'm like, it's all focused around dry cleaning in apartments. But anyways,
yeah.
So it's like, oh, I mentioned Elaine, so it's like, okay, cool. So Jerry goes back to his apartment, and then Kramer comes out to show off, the new hair to the guys, and they're polite, but you can tell that they don't like it. Even their faces are like, oh, you got mousse in your hair, and then the guy says something in Spanish. I don't understand it, what he said, but it's probably wasn't good. I think he says mall.
Yeah, you can tell he's being rude.
But I think mall is bad or whatever. People kill me in the comments. I'm like, I don't know Spanish, even though I live in San Diego, right?
Yeah.
But he looks like he's just like a disgusted look like he's looking at it. And then Kramer's like, thanks, buddy. And then, he gives him a smack on the shoulder there, and he leaves. Like, he's like, getting good looks for my... But yeah, a friend was telling me, like, I feel like she was like working out a bit or something like that. She, I think, had like pink hair or something like that, and then she just dyed it like, just back to like brown or black or whatever. And then she was kind of saying, like, everybody seems to have something to say about your hair after you change it.
Yeah.
Whether they liked it or they did, especially if they didn't, because it's like, people say, oh, I love your new hair. I didn't really like that pink. It's like, you could have not said that last part. She's like,
we're past that. You didn't have to hurt my feelings because it's not going to change anything now. I just left it alone.
I didn't like that hair color you had before, or just stuff like that. It's like, oh yeah, they always mention it once you change it, because then they feel comfortable. Like, oh well, you changed it probably because you didn't like it too. So let me let you know that here's my chance to tell you that fucking sucked.
And even if someone just goes to compliment you straight up and they say, "Oh, your new hair looks really good," and you're like, so they didn't like it before.
Yeah.
You should just,
But anyway, so it goes back to Jerry. He goes to the apartment where Elaine is still. She's still in there, and then he mentions the good news that he got her an apartment in the building. It's kind of like a build-up.
When the scene started, I was waiting for the chest slap. I'm waiting for I was like, when's she gonna slap him in the chest? Because you could feel it coming. It was like a typical Elaine situation where she just get out.
She pushes the 2-hand push. Get out. Push.
So I was waiting for that, and I was like, every time she spoke, I'm like, when's she gonna hit him in the chest? But
and I think this was the first one that she did the get out, right?
Yeah, because it felt like it was going to, and then
which seems to be which ends up being like a signature move of hers later on. Like it just she does it all like get out and pushes them. They always kind of brace themselves for the push and then can react to it.
Yeah.
But so as soon as he mentions, it to her, and then she's all excited. She's like, "Oh, we'll be neighbors. I'll be right above you. I can hang out all the time. I'll I'll pop in. We can exchange keys." And that's when Jerry realizes he fucked up. He's like,
"Yes, instant regret."
He was like, right away, you can see it in his face, like, "Oh yeah, all the time." There's no buffer zone really, and then it is established already that they are, exes, like an ex, girlfriend. And
living right upstairs.
And then it ends with another comedy bit talking about how it'd be nice if, like, life was more like a movie, where you can cut if you say a wrong line.
Just cut and reset and enter the scene again.
Where it's like cut, because it was something stupid that he said. He's like, he didn't need to do that. It's like he just making his life more difficult.
Could have just turned back time.
Yeah, which is, I mean, that's like, anyways, it's just like he made his own fucking problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So, and then it goes back to Monk's. George is leaving, and Jerry just catches him as he's leaving to I think right in front there, which is a kind of a different scene than we've ever seen. The set than we've seen before. It was outside of Monks.
It doesn't even look like part of the same restaurant. It looks...
Yeah. Which it's kind of weird. I'm like, oh, why do they do that? Anyways, he's telling George about like how he fucked up. He's like, this whole thing, it's like, oh, move, it's like, oh, I asked Elaine to move, or I got Elaine an apartment right above me. He's like, right above you? He's like, an ex-girlfriend. He's like, it's so stupid, so stupid. He's like, I think we did talk about it before. I've never been friends with an ex ever.
No. Not really.
No, I mean, it's why?
It's only a thing on TV.
Yeah, it's so weird that Elaine was written like that.
Yeah.
Was it just kind of like first couple episodes, like, oh, this will be interesting, and then she became a recurring character? It's like, well, I guess we have to keep playing into that. It's like, why couldn't she have just been a friend of theirs?
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
I don't know why it was written that way, because there's no real. Yeah, I think there's an episode coming up this season, maybe, where it's they make the rules about sleeping together, friends with benefits episode.
Oh, okay, yeah. I know that does come up later.
That's the only time it would actually play a role in the actual. They didn't have to be a couple.
Yeah. And then it's like she couldn't have ever just been a friend, which is kind of funny. It's like, oh, I wonder if like Jerry was like, we can't have a woman on the show who Jerry has fucked.
Yeah. He's just flexing.
You can't just have a woman there. Oh yeah, we have this Elaine character. Oh, Jerry used to sleep with her, by the way.
Yeah, he's just claiming everybody.
Yeah, which is kind of funny. Anyway, so they go on and about living just below an ex, and then George was saying, it's like, oh, well, you got to bring dates to, you're going to have to go to their house now. You lost the home bed advantage.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I need the home bed advantage. Yeah, you need every chance, or like every advantage you can get.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, because that would be super awkward to bring a date to your place, and then you could have way more potential of running into Elaine than you would if she didn't live in the fucking building.
Yeah. Make everything awkward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the whole point. It's like, oh, it's just awkward. It's an ex. So they are gonna go. Jerry's like, oh, I'm gonna go into Monks. It's like, oh, George, come in with me. George is like, I can't go. I just left there. They saw me leave. It's like, who cares? Just for a few minutes. Come on. And then George just makes this thing. He's like, it's all awkward. They already know I'm coming back, and I can't do. And then he there's a woman in the window that he gestures to, like I don't know what he saw me go, and he points to Jerry. It's just a funny like George moment.
Yeah,
like nobody cares, nobody gives a shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then goes back into Monks, and they're talking about Elaine moving in. It's, it's like it's not good. It's like, well, I mean, maybe she wouldn't want to. It's like, why wouldn't she want to move in? It's a great price and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, it's a week shower. It's like, nobody's not moving into a place for $400 a month for a week shower.
TV shows don't usually put the money there, because then it kind of takes away the longevity of the episodes. So $400 sounds like not very much money.
Yeah.
Now, early 90s in New York, I don't know what it would have been, but today, that wouldn't be $400 in New York City.
Yeah, I think it was in the Seinfeld subreddit. They were talking about like they would have their apartments would be like $5,000-$6,000 a month
nowadays.
Yeah, something like that. It's like, what does Kramer do that he's able to afford his apartment? He doesn't do anything. They're like probably like, oh, I don't know. And it's like kind of goes into like even like, oh, 2022 Seinfeld, he'd be cryptocurrency or maybe drugs or something like that. He'd sell drugs. But anyways, and so they're going off and stuff like that, and then Jerry makes a comment to a woman at the coffee shop. He's like, oh God, look at that woman just feeding her baby like greasy corned beef hash. It's like,
isn't that child abuse?
Yeah. And then George instantly like, which is very not George characteristic. He's like, oh man, he says something about he wants a baby.
Yeah.
They've never.
I'd like to have a kid. Of course, I have to have a date first.
Yeah. Oh, I'd like to have a baby. Oh, I got to have a date first. Like, they never touch on that ever. The four of them ever again. It's weird that you would bring that up.
Yeah.
It's probably the early writing. They're like, oh yeah, this will get this will work.
Yeah, and where I said this is the first guy's episode, so he probably had that in there, and like, yeah, we'll leave it in, see what goes, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it was just a quick
anywhere.
thing for George to say that he's not getting dates.
Yeah,
And then he talks about a buddy of his got married, and then he's been wearing a wedding band, and then he's been getting women coming up to him. You know, it's like, oh, they love the wedding, you know, the wedding band. And then that kind of brings it up to like, oh yeah, you know, I should try that. Or like, I think Jerry mentions that like Kramer
has his father's wedding band. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I should just wear it, try it out. And then George, it doesn't take much to convince me. He's like, oh no, yeah.
Yeah.
So, it goes to the next scene where George is getting the wedding band from Kramer, and then he's talking to Kramer, and it's like a social experiment. It's like, oh, let's see if women will talk to me while I wear this. And then Kramer's like, just shits on George. He's like, you shouldn't mess around with that. You shouldn't mess around with that. I told you need to get plugs or a piece. And he's like, why are you walking around like this all day?
And the next scene, the next time we see George, he brings up his baldness. So like Kramer got in his head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why would you walk around like this? And then there are shots that probably weren't like, it's not like not meant to be like that, but you can see it's like shot like his head, bald head is in the shot. So you can even see how much balder he is on the top, like his crown, because it goes up. And I'm like, oh, where Kramer's talking, you can see the bald crown on. I'm like, the guy shooting the camera knew what he was doing.
Yeah, just bringing it on home.
You're a good looking guy. Except for the bald fucking head of yours. Yeah. It's just like Kramer can't just not be Kramer, which is
doesn't take social cues at all.
No. Which is hilarious. And then it goes back to Harold and Manny arguing loudly in the hallway again about tiny sponges. Yeah. I don't like the little sponge. They're a couple, right? I mean, it's totally implied that they are.
Yeah, it feels like they are.
Not just like just business partners.
Best friend business. Yeah. It seems like they're a couple that runs.
Yeah.
That's what I felt from it.
That's what I got out of it, at least. He's like, and then Jerry breaks it up the same way. I like that. He's like, boys. Just are yelling in that courtyard of a hallway.
Yeah.
Oh, they mentioned, Jerry's like, oh, your friend Elaine, she cannot get that apartment. Someone offered Manny $5,000 for the apartment. And Elaine can have it if she, has the $5,000. As soon as, give it to her if she can come up with that same money. And Jerry's like, oh, understandable. Like, I'm in the clear, basically.
I have an out.
Yeah. So he's like, good. So he, goes back and tells George about it. He's like, it all worked out. Somebody's coming with, $5,000 for the apartment. It's like, Elaine, what do you say? Elaine doesn't have $5,000. She can't do it. She's gone. So she's not going to move in. And he's like, it's all part of, what does he say? It's all part of God's plan or something like that?
It's all part of the divine plan.
The divine plan, yeah. And then George, like you said, that comment, he's like, where does the baldness fit into this plan?
Yeah, that's Kramer just living in his head.
Yeah. But yeah, and he's talking about like, oh, Elaine buzzes to come up. He's like, okay, now you're gonna watch me be a phony here. to George, like to preemptive it, and it's like I'm gonna pretend like I'm actually upset about it. So if you can't handle it, you can leave.
Yeah,
the acting that he's gonna do is already preemptively acting like I'm gonna act my ass off with this. Mm-hmm. And so George is like, oh no, I can handle it. And then Elaine comes up, she's so happy, she's singing. She's like, oh, it's such a great day. You ever wake up? It's such a great day. And then George looks at her and he just gets up and leaves to the back room.
He goes to the room.
It's like Jerry's going to crush her dreams.
Yeah.
And then she's saying like, oh, I'm ready to go. I got my first and last month's checks ready to, here, da-da-da. And she's like, I only got $75 left in my account after this. And then Jerry's like, all right. Jerry just like lands that plane on her. He's like, all right, here we go. Sorry, you need another $5,000 if you're going to move into that place. Because, you mentioned about him. Oh, they got an offer. She's like, I don't have that. She's devastated. And then she's like, slumps and sits on the couch like, oh, that's terrible. Da da da. My dreams are crushed, kind of thing. No longer singing anymore.
Yeah.
And then Kramer just comes in. He's like, oh, well, hey, makes a comment of like, hey, neighbor.
Hey, my new neighbor.
Hey, new neighbor. I'm not a new neighbor anymore. And tells him she's not moving in. They want $5,000 from her. And then Kramer's like, well, just, give him $5,000. She's like, I don't have $5,000.
He's like, Jerry, you don't have $5,000 you can lend her?
Well, just like Kramer doesn't live in reality. He's like, well, yeah, $5,000. What's the point? Yeah, just Elaine, just pay him $5,000. She's like, I don't have it. Oh, people don't have just money hanging around?
Yeah. But Jerry can just lend it to him. I noticed this too. Kramer had the arm out and he's like shaking his arm at Jerry and at Elaine when he's talking to. So he's working on his character still a bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and then he sticks. He pulls Jerry into the situation and offers like, hey, why don't Jerry just pay you for it?
Yeah.
Or why Jerry just pay the $5,000, just loan it to you, and it just puts Jerry in the most awkward situation because he does have $5,000.
Yeah.
Elaine never asked him for it. Kramer did. So he's like, well, you have that, right? He's like, yes. But, and he's like, yeah, what's the problem? Just do it. It's $5,000 between friends. What's the big deal? And then Elaine's like, that's a lot of money, It's like, what's funny between friends? It's like, oh, it can ruin friendships. Like, no, it won't. Kramer just won't. She keeps putting up like things of like, oh, well, this is not a good idea. And Kramer's like, fuck it, who cares? Because it's not his money. It's not his apartment. He just is in there fucking everything up for.
He's just sinking the whole ship and doesn't even know he's doing it
for no reason. He doesn't have to open his damn mouth
at all.
And he has it to loan. So like, oh, what's the big deal? So Elaine's like, okay, before I do that, let me just double check the apartment. So she leaves the scene. Jerry slams the door. He's like, what are you doing? You are ruining this for me.
It's all over. It's taken care of, done, finished.
It's like, oh, I didn't know you didn't want her in here. It's like, well, yeah, she's an ex, and kind of explains it to him like, it's awkward and you made it even worse. And then what does he say? He goes on
What'd
to
you
say,
give her the $5,000 for?
Yeah. It's like, it's Jerry's fault. What does he say? It's like, you're not normal, right? Does he say something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, people feel
because you're a pod.
Pod. You're not a person.
You're a pod.
Like,
you're not human.
It's pretty good.
Yeah. And then George comes out of hiding.
But it made me think, I've never loaned anybody money, like serious money. It might be like, oh, hey, I'll get beers, this time or whatever. Like, I'll get around, or like, oh, I'll pick up beers for practice. And then it goes around to somebody else, or like, I've never like loaned anybody serious money, like, even over $100. I've never borrowed that money from a friend either. Just made me think.
I've had to borrow that much. I just never had to lend that much, I guess.
Yeah.
And it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah, I was going to say, it would make me, like, as the borrower, I would feel like shit. I'd be like, I would judge everything that I spend my money on. It's like, why, I need to, like,
should I buy a bag of chips or should I put that 80 cents toward paying back? Yeah.
It's like, you just kind of have that over your head. Even more so than, say, like, I don't know, like bills, or like, say if you have like a credit card payment or something like that. Because it's like a person. Like, you owe, $5,000. That's still a lot of money today. I wouldn't feel comfortable borrowing $5,000.
No.
Because even like, I don't know when I would be able to pay that back too. And especially in like 1990 or whenever this was, it's got to be a shit ton.
Yeah, it's a lot more money then.
Mm-hmm. And then if I did like loan it out to people, I think it depends on the person. I think I would be cool, but I pretty much, I in my head, I already know I'd probably would be judging the shit out of them on their purchases. Let's say if you're friends with them and they're on Facebook or Instagram or something like that. It's like, oh, cool. Expensive brunch, dinner, or whatever. Oh, you got a new fucking phone there, huh?
What you eating there?
Oh, nice new shoes for you, huh? But you couldn't pay back. Yeah.
You're keeping your feet dry and warm, and you couldn't give him money back?
Yeah. Did you need new shoes? It's stuff like that. I'm like, I would think I wouldn't be like that, but You know,
Subconsciously, you might be.
I am a piece of shit. So, but anyways, so to go back to it, they're in the apartment still. Elaine comes down and she wants it. She wants the apartment still, and she's still willing to borrow the $5,000. She's like, I have no problem borrowing the money, and so it ends that scene. And then goes to that Sunday brunch that they had mentioned earlier in the episode, set up for that New York marathon, and then George is there, Jerry and Elaine. So it kind of goes to like two different, like it splits up between what Jerry's talking about and or Jerry's conversations and interactions, and then George's interactions.
Yeah.
People like Jerry's talking to some of Elaine's friends, and they're like, "Oh, you're the one who helped her savior or whatever, knight in shining armor kind of deal. You gave her the loan. Oh, you're such a nice guy." And Jerry's like, "Yeah,
yeah." Everyone's so proud of him. He's just,
He's like, even more. It's like he's still not happy about it.
Yeah.
And it goes into George. This is also where he's wearing that wedding band, the ring. And he's going to talk to, just socializing with different people and talking to different ladies. And he's hitting it off with all of them. It's like 3 different conversations with women that he finds attractive. And it's like, oh, the opening is already there. He's already talking about it. And he was laying it on thick right away about like, oh, my wife. And then
like right from the beginning.
Yeah. And then it goes into like, he's not bringing it up anymore. He's like, and it's like even at the last conversation, he's trying to pull the thing off. He's trying to pull the wedding band off, but he can't do it. He's even like, no. This was just an experiment. I'm actually not married. He's like, yeah, okay. And then the women leave.
It must be the confidence. He had the ring on, and he felt that he was going to get in now, so he had the confidence to go with it. And the lady saw the confidence, and
yeah. And then it goes to the conversation. Jerry, he's talking to Elaine. And then she kind of saw him talking to a woman. It's like, oh, is it, you hitting it off with so-and-so? He's like, no, not really. Looks like you were flirting with her. I'm like, I'm a guy. It always looks like that. And then she had mentioned, like, I was thinking about it. It would be weird, us being in the same building. And what if we brought, dates over? Don't you think that would be weird? If we
cramp our style.
Yeah, that kind of thing. Exactly what he was thinking about. I was like, well, how big of a problem that would be. And then he's like, that wouldn't bug you? Like, I could, not move in. And she was kind of giving him an out. And then he said, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
He had another out. And completely, like, legitimate, because she was even feeling the same, like, issue.
Yeah.
And so he's like, no, we're good. And then, anyways, it goes to the boys over there. They reconvene. And they talk about how stupid each one of them are. Like, I'm so stupid. And George talks about, it's like, no, Jerry leads it off like, oh, Elaine gave me another out and I didn't take it. That kind of thing. It's like, I could have done it. I could have, been off scot-free and she wouldn't have moved in.
Then George comes back with, I threw away a life of guilt-free sex and every sporting event in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
I'm Costanza, the Lord of Idiots.
And floor seats to MSG. And then he's talking about, he said, I'm, Lord of the Idiots. And as soon as that, like, comedic timing, some idiot in the background, they're like looking at the marathon, the racers. Yeah. And
you're all winners.
Yeah. Cheers. Like, yay. And like, cheering him on from a fucking apartment. He's like, suddenly a new contender approaches. It's like morons who fucking like clap at the end of a movie or clap when a plane lands.
Yeah. At least a plane landing, the pilot's going to hear you. Clap at the end of a movie. Who's going to hear you? The teenager picking up the popcorn off the floor and the sticky gum under the seat? Like,
yeah. I mean, I've been to some movies where like some big, I don't know, reactions where people are into it. I do like that sometimes. Been to like premieres or whatever, people really get into it. Where it's like, like sometimes talking during a movie, that's not so good. But if everybody's like in on the same jokes or a fandom or whatever, then it could be good. But I've only ever seen it like memed out where people clap at a movie being done. It's like, you fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I went on a date with somebody and then it went really, really well until the end of the movie. The person clapped.
Yeah. I went to see Ninja Turtles like in 1980, whatever. I was a kid.
Mhm.
and it was lined up around the block. And I didn't make it in the first show, and then you just stayed in line, standing outside on the sidewalk until the next show went in. And the theater then had curtains, and when those curtains opened, people lost their shit. But this is a bunch of like 8 to 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
And there was cheering for the first 5 minutes of the movie, and you couldn't hear a thing because everyone's cheering so much for this movie. I was like, can we just watch the movie?
Watch the fuck. You're ruining it. You stand up, you're a little kid. You're ruining it for me.
I was up on the balcony screaming at people.
Shut up. Shut up. You see like Elaine yelling.
Yeah.
But anyways, so it goes to Jerry's apartment, and he's on the phone with George. He's like, I couldn't sleep all night. And like, I gotta tell Elaine, that kind of thing. It's like he's got to get it off his chest, basically.
Yeah.
So he's gonna tell her that he has a problem with her moving in, and then he's like, "Are you listening to me?" He's like, "You can't hear George," but he's like, Jerry's end of the conversation. He's like, "I don't know, just use soap to get it off."
Yeah.
The ring is still stuck on George's finger.
Grease.
Triaxle grease. I don't know. And he hangs up. And then Kramer comes in. He's, he's all like, oh yeah, like cocky. Like, hey, I got something for you. You'll like this.
He's clipping his nails. He's walking around clipping his fingernails in someone else's apartment, not even over a napkin. He's just walking around.
Yeah,
it
just
It's like,
fingernail clippings in his. Yeah. I didn't even take note of that, but totally he was just
clipping the nails.
just why?
Yeah.
But he tells Jerry that he's found somebody who's wants the apartment and is willing to pay $10,000 cash for it.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Oh, who has that kind of money?" He's like, "Oh, he's in the music business." And then it was just like a toss away thing. They move on because Jerry's focused on Elaine not moving in.
Yeah.
And $10,000. It's a lot of money. So he's
this
like,
is a big the devil you know situation, right?
Yeah. So he's like, oh, that works out because Elaine's never going to borrow that much money. It's double of what she was apprehensive about, borrowing before. And then it's possible, they never mention it, but it's possible Jerry doesn't have $10,000 to loan out.
Yeah.
And so it's like, so he's all excited that he doesn't have to tell her that he doesn't want her to move in, that he had a problem with it. And she can't move in because she doesn't have the money. So he's all stoked about it. And then the scene ends, but it starts up again back at the same apartment. And
Jerry congratulates or thanks Kramer. He says, occasionally I'd like to help the humans.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's in a pod.
Instead of being a pod. So he's like, oh, Kramer, you're the best. That kind of thing. And so it comes back and it's in the apartment. And it's Manny, Harold, and also Elaine. And they're, with Jerry in there. And there's just rock music going on. Just loud rock, instrumental music playing. And why? So apparently the person who was in the music industry who moved up is having band practice all day.
Yeah, in the apartment.
In the apartment. Why? Why would you have band practice in a one-bedroom apartment in New York?
I think in New York, if you got an apartment for $400, you could just use that as your studio. It's probably cheaper than getting a studio to practice in. So you just,
Yeah.
It's probably not even living in there. Just
yeah, it's pretty good. So they're all, talking about how it's so loud. Da, da, da. Well, can't you do anything about it? He talked to the two guys. He's like, no, I'm not going to tell, I'm not going to go up there. It stinks up there.
Yeah.
It's like they're the owners of the building, assuming that they're the owners of the building. It's like, you're not going to do anything about that? Somebody playing music? It's like, well, he said that they can play until 11.
Yeah.
That's so late.
Yeah.
So imagine that just going on all day, like sporadically until 11.
11 at night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Elaine makes like a little comment about it. It's like, oh, I'd be so quiet. I'd be like a mouse. You wouldn't hear a peep out of me. Yeah. And then, of course, Kramer comes in. He's loving it. He's like, a fucking.
I love the one they do after this one. Dancing
of course,
with the broom
of course. Yeah, he's fucked Jerry over again. So it's like you said, Kramer's got a good deed there. I'm like, no, he just fucked over Jerry. And you would assume that Kramer could hear it, but maybe not from being whatever.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
The tennis court away across the hall.
Yeah. So it's pretty good. So it ends with Jerry talking about a stand-up bit about shushing. It's like, oh, when you shush, it does nothing. In movie theater, does nothing. You can get shushed, and people are like, oh, where did that shush come from? I don't know. And the people who are, shush. He talks about like back in the day, I used to be the shushy, and now I'm the shusher. And it's going on about it. And it's like, yeah, and then when you shush people at the movie theater and they don't shush, they're the unshushables, and then it kind of ends.
Yeah.
So I had a story about shushing somebody.
I was gonna say, do you ever have to shush somebody?
Oh yeah, I didn't tell you. I may have told this on my other podcast, but okay. So I shushed an ex one time, and this is an adult. I shushed an adult. So, anyways, you'd already tell it's not going good, right? So we were at a small bar, a local comedy show. It's like a really tiny bar. A buddy of mine, I've mentioned him before. He's a stand-up comic, but it was like when he was starting, like, he was doing some smaller shows at, non-comedy places.
Yeah.
So I went with my girlfriend, and then she, her sister was going to go with us with her new, like, date, or a guy that she's, like, on a first date with. It's like, oh, this will be a perfect fun date night. We go to a bar, we maybe get some drinks and just go see some comedy. It'll be a fun thing to do downtown, whatever. And I'm like, okay, it'll be fun, right? That sounds totally cool,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so my ex, she maybe had one too many drinks, maybe. She was having fun. She was, enjoying herself, I guess you could say. And then she was talking so loudly in between jokes and for setups of jokes. Like, it wasn't a big bar. And I'm like, they're talking it into a mic, which is, they could almost just do it without it, because that's how small the place was. And I'm like, everybody, they can I'm like, we're not that far away from the front either.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I just, in my head, I know better now, but I was just like, oh, shh. And then I was like, not the best move, right? She was not having the shush.
You're like, I just learned.
And it was like, if I had a rewind moment, I probably would have. But hold on, it did kind of work out with other elements to the story. It worked out. So mine was probably like butterfly effect that caused something else to stop this. So my shush, she was like, wasn't having it, and loudly was like, "You shushed me, and she's she's drunk.
Yeah.
You shushed me. What am I, a child? You shush me. And then I was like, Jerry, I wish I wouldn't have said that. I'm like, fucked up. And then her sister like leaned over and practically grabbed her face and looked her right in the eyes, like, shut the fuck up. You're embarrassing me. And then just pushed her, like, basically pushed her. They're sisters. They live together. And then pushed her back. They get away with it, yeah. Yeah. And basically grabbed her and said, shut the fuck up. She was quiet after that.
Yeah, that quieted her down.
So her sister saved my ass. Because it was her first date. She's like, my older sister is just drunk, loud asshole at this show. And it was already established. She knew who the guy knew who we were. It's like, oh, this is my sister. This is her boyfriend. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, cool. We're hanging out. Da, da, da. So he's probably like, Jesus fucking Christ. This dumbass won't shut the fuck up. It's not your show, you stupid fuck. Anyway, so it was, I wasn't able, my shushing did nothing. It was the yelling and saying that you're fucking embarrassing me. That did something. So don't shush people.
No, I
does
have to
not
be pretty hard up to shush somebody as an adult.
I didn't even think about it. I was just like, shh, fuck.
Yeah.
Instantly like, fuck.
You're only on the fourth H when you thought this is a bad idea.
It just like, as soon as like slow mo, shoo, 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 and it just echoes in my head like,
Yeah. No.
Oh no! But yeah, her sister saved my ass. So yeah, that was my story. It's pretty good. From
so
then
anyone
on,
listening at home, don't shush people when you're on a date. Sister can't always be there to save your ass.
yeah, make sure you check with the sister first. I'm like, you're gonna have my back if I shush her, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I remember that when he was going over that shushing bit. I'm like, oh, I got a story for you. But yeah, that was it. Good episode. I am excited for. I mean, all these are good, right? We say it every time.
Yeah.
I'm excited for the next one. That's probably one of my favorites.
What is the next one?
It's the statue.
Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Spoilers. It's where the maid, or not the maid, the cleaning guy steals from Jerry.
Yeah.
Anyways,
it'd be good.
Yeah. So that's good. Yeah, I guess we're done here. Let's
if people want to check us out on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
We're the Second Button Podcast on Instagram.
Yep.
And we're on Twitter as well as 2ND Second Button Cast, because it's Twitter and you only need so many characters.
Yeah.
So 2ND, I'm a paramedic, people heard that I think already. We had a dispatcher one time and sent some to the second floor of the hospital, and he goes, "You're going to 2ND, whatever that's supposed to mean." So we thought it was like 2 and then ND was the department.
Yeah. Second.
So someone like a space, I think, in the dispatch notes. So like 2ND, whatever that's supposed to mean.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Anyway, that had nothing to do with anything, but
I've been doing a better job of linking all the different social media. So not Facebook, we don't have one. Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. So if you're listening to this, you can check out the notes and you can link to all our socials there.
And on YouTube, we started video.
Mm-hmm.
This one, we're doing a little fancier, I guess, video. I'm trying to spice it up a little bit. Yep. And if you're watching the video, you can see my Mandelbaum gym shirt.
Mandelbaum.
Yeah. And there's a TV lifting the weights. This pump it, it's go time.
It's go time. Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff you only catch on the YouTube. So
definitely
check that out.
Yeah. So like, share, subscribe, and until then, we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Yeah, bye now.